これより世界のユースケースに見るブロックチェーンの可能性をテーマにパネルディスカッションを行ってまいります。まずはじめにパネリストの皆様ご紹介させていただきます。まずはトレード IX リージョナルヘッドオブアジアパシフィックレオン・スコット様、そしてデジタルベンチャーズ CEO オラポン・チンニュン様、続いてモネタゴ CEO ジェシー・チェナード様、そして NTT データ金融事業推進部デジタル戦略推進部部長赤羽義治様、最後にモデレーターを務めていただきますのは三井住友銀行トレードファイナンス営業部グローバルヘッドオブトレードイノベーション山崎真一郎様です。それではここからの進行は山崎様にお願いできればと思います。山崎様、どうぞよろしくお願いいたします。山崎様、お願いいたします。
はい、かしこまりました。ご来場のお客様、オンラインでご視聴されている皆様、本セッションのモデレーターを務めます三井住友銀行トレードファイナンス営業部トレードイノベーションのグローバルヘッドを務める山崎と申します。よろしくお願いします。さて、本セッションでは世界のユースケースに見るブロックチェーンの可能性というテーマで実際のユースケース、プラットフォームを推進するアメリカ、イギリス、タイ、日本の4社から1名ずつパネリストとしてご参加させていただきます。昨日、並行の京都で大島よりエンタープライズブロックチェーンの可能性というセッションにて並行のデジタル分野、デジタルトランスフォーメーションにおけるビジョンについてご案内申し上げました。実際、デジタルトランスフォーメーションが再現されている方々も多くいらっしゃると思いますが、その一方で、実際何が変わるのか、もしくはなんとなく感じるけれども、自分の仕事はさほど変わっていないと思われる方も少なくないのではないかと思います。また、どうやったら変えられるのか、何がどこに使えるのか、どんな技術が使えるのか、イメージが湧かないというお気持ちの方々もいらっしゃるのではないかと思います。実際、私自身も3年ほど前のそう考えています。現在、トレードファイナンス、貿易金融の分野でシンガポールより並行のデジタル展開をグローバルに指揮する立場でありますが、実際、それぞれの国で利用できるか、利用されているプラットフォームというのは異なります。従いまして、その国でのブロックチェーンの浸透度、ブロックチェーンのリテラシーが異なってきているというのは、実際、肌感覚として体感している企業です。そこで、本セッションでは日本、海外、4名の必要な方々、それぞれが推進されているプラットフォーム、並びに技術をご紹介いただきまして、それぞれのお立場からデジタルトランスフォーメーションが社会にもたらす影響、ブロックチェーンがもたらすソリューション、導入のためのチャレンジやキーポイント、これらのポイントに触れていただきながら説明させていただきたいと思います。では、この後パネリストのご紹介並びに進みますが、ここから単教書ですが、英語にちょっと繰り返させていただきたいと思います。First, Leon, I would like to kind of pass you the floor to introduce yourself and work with.
Thank you. Konnichiwa, はじめまして、私はレオンです。Firstly, a big thanks to our good friends and partners SMBC for the invitation to speak today. My name is Leon Scott. I am the regional head of Asia and Middle East for TradeIX, the company behind the Polo network, the global blockchain-based network for trade and working capital. Prior to TradeIX, I worked in a number of roles for HSBC, DHL, and Prime Revenue across Asia Pacific and Europe. Looking first at Yamazaki-san's question around the impact of technology on society. Technology has dramatically changed the face of many industries around the world and created entirely new industries. There are applications on your smartphone for almost every part of your life, personal and business. It has made the world more connected, changed societies, raised income levels, and enabled small companies to emerge and to, in some cases, challenge established players. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said about the industry of global trade and trade finance. It is an industry that is relied upon by every country in the world to raise their GDP and living standards, but it is still operating primarily on emails and paper documents being couriered around the world. And the Japanese economy is particularly reliant on paper. There are some good reasons for this. Global trade is incredibly complex and involves many parties, countries, documents, and there have been some technology improvements over time. SWIFT was developed in the 1970s and remains the backbone of payments and trade messaging. Banks have developed their own customer portals, and more recently, third-party companies have developed platforms over the last 10 or so years to provide independent applications for trade. But these platforms, although they provide a good service, they're typically limited to a single product or a limited group of users. And the reason they cannot scale to be an industry-wide platform is because of the technology that has been available up until now. These technologies are typically centralized platforms with single databases, where all companies must put their data in one location and access one platform to perform and interact with one another. When you look at industry-wide technology, there are a few must-have requirements. The first is security and privacy. Each party must retain absolute control over their own data. The trust and provenance of data being exchanged. What I see is what you see. Transparency and auditability. No single vendor risk. And it should ideally be an open network, which means other developers can add additional applications and services to the network, freely and openly. The good news is that technology required to achieve these is now available. It is still new, but it is available. Blockchain, and more specifically R3's Corda technology, is the only way to achieve all of these requirements together. But also, as important, is cloud and APIs. And this brings me to the Marco Polo network, which is a blockchain-based network for trade and working capital focused on open accounts. The network is a collaboration effort initially between banks and corporates with technology companies, and the ecosystem will organically expand as we grow. Marco Polo is an entirely decentralized or distributed network, which means every participant is independent from one another and exchanges data and assets securely and seamlessly on a peer-to-peer basis. Marco Polo is multi-solution, multi-bank, and multi-corporate, and it is an open network. We intend to work with other networks in the industry, such as some of those on this panel with me today, the likes of NTT Data's TradeWaltz, Monetago, Digital Ventures, and others such as Contour. From a single connection, users can immediately interact with any other network user on a peer-to-peer basis. They can exchange digital data, such as purchase orders, invoices, shipping information, and they can access multiple trade and working capital solutions from their network of banks. Users can benefit from network effects. Every time a new organization joins, the value of the Marco Polo network increases for every other participant. And importantly, it can connect to existing workflows and processes typically managed in an ERP system, for example. We have been testing Marco Polo extensively, and we are very happy and proud to now have production applications. These are receivables discounting and payment commitment. Payment commitment is a new digital trade settlement method where a bank provides commitment to pay based on the matching of digital trade data. It can be an alternative to a letter of credit or an alternative even to open account. And the third solution that will be available this year is called Supplier Pay. This has the potential to have the most impact. It is a procure-to-pay solution combining supply chain finance with a single channel for payments. And most importantly, it is available to all suppliers, right down to the smallest supplier. We do this by leveraging the latest technology to automate and streamline the onboarding process. Suppliers who have not able to access trade finance products as an independent company are able to leverage the financial standing of their customer to request early payment of their invoices and dramatically improve their cash flow. Which takes me back to the original question from Yamazaki-san. What changes or solutions can blockchain bring to society? A good example is Supplier Pay. Marco Polo will enable companies of all sizes around the world to access working capital solutions, in many cases for the first time. A supplier only needs an internet connection and a bank account, and they can view their approved invoices and request early payment and see the status of their invoices and payments at all times. Provides them with the cash flow to fund their business, pay their bills, and not only survive, but to thrive and grow. The second question from Yamazaki-san, what are the obstacles to success? The biggest obstacle is adoption. The adoption of any new technology has obstacles. The first is from a technology provider's perspective, from my perspective, is creating a compelling offering that provides value to the initial users to attract a core group of participants to start with. The second obstacle is to seed the network with the initial group of participants. And the biggest obstacle here is typically a resistance to change, a resistance to change from even a broken process. So digitization is a journey. It won't happen immediately. Marco Polo enables corporates to start how they choose in a small manner and expand at their own pace. You could connect, for example, to use receivables discounting and then expand to use some of the other modules on the network. So you don't have to change everything all at the same time. We are right in the middle of this stage right now, and we're in a good position. We have a core group of banks, and we have some corporates who are testing and piloting the solution. But we always welcome new banks and new corporates. The more participants, the more value for everyone. So please get involved if you are interested. That completes my session. Thanks for your attention. Arigato gozaimasu.
Level, perhaps towards the executive level as well. What will you say? Where do you see a typical resistance in from what level will be the most critical point? Leon?
I'm sorry, Shin, I missed the start of that question.
Oh, sorry. Maybe I kind of switched the audio side. So maybe repeat that question. You mentioned about the resistance to change. That's something you have observed. Now, I'm just curious to understand which part in the corporate, from executive to the working level, which part will you be the most important in critical kind of level to change?
I think it ultimately requires the buy-in or the support from both levels. You must have the support from an executive level because that enables a company to focus. If you have an executive level that is pushing a particular message or a particular project, then that helps everybody within the company to focus on that one objective. So it definitely requires support from executive level, but really importantly, it also requires support at the working level because the working level are the people who are living and breathing the problems today and the solutions in the future. So it's not enough to just have the executive team pushing change. The working team must understand, why are we changing? What is the reason for the change? What is the next step? And then what is the step after that? And then what is ultimately the end goal? Because in a lot of cases, digitization also has the potential to change jobs, and move from a very manual, operational center to a very digital operation center. So, it involves the need to make sure that those people are also repurposed potentially or there is a way to manage that internally. So it really requires it across the entire company, which is another one of the challenges. It's not just a single team or a single executive. It requires full support.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. Thank you very much for your insight, Leon. Much appreciated. Now, I would like to move to the next panelist, who is from Thailand. Kun Orapon, may I invite you? Mr. Orapon, you might be on the mute. Mr. Orapon, I'm afraid you might be on the mute. Welcome.
Hang on 1 second. Why can't I unmute? No.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay. All right. And can you see the slide?
Yes, I can see your slides.
Okay, let me start. Okay. My name is Orapong Tianyan. I'm the CEO of a company called Digital Ventures. Digital Ventures is a subsidiary of Siam Commercial Bank, the largest bank in Thailand. Last year, I was one of the 4 presidents of the bank. We created a platform to facilitate supply chain trades that we believe that there's a potential that this platform can be something even bigger than the bank. So starting at the beginning of the year, we spun this out as a fintech startup company to expand the platform globally. So let me go through with you quickly on the first question that Yamasaki-san has posted. Right? How would blockchain change our world? Right? If you're following the technology, you will hear quite often that many people believe that blockchain has a potential to change the world even bigger than what internet has changed the world so far. I just imagine that all of the trades, all of the money transfer can happen in the open network as easy as you sending an email or sending a chat messaging today. Right? And blockchain is the fundamental technology that could enable that to happen. Let me run through 4 scenarios to share with you how blockchain could change the world. Right? The first one, the underlying technology of blockchain is called distributed ledger technology, or DLT. Right? If you look in the supply chain trades world, right, it's all about exchanging of document. Typically, it starts from you issue a purchase order from a buyer, go to a supplier ship the products with shipping document, right? The goods come to the warehouse issue good receipt document, go back to the supplier issue an invoice. Then all of the documents come together in account payable department for the payment to be processed. Right? If you look at all of these documents, then they're just ledgers. Ledgers is nothing just complex. It's just recording information on a piece of paper. Right? And it's a piece of paper on purchase order, on good receipt, on invoices. What blockchain enable us to do is to be able to securely and less complex way of sharing all of these ledgers. And as a result of that, you can realize a lot of productivity gains. Just imagine that all your trade information, trade data can be easily shared on the open network. Right? Once it can be shared, then it can be automated. Right? Therefore, first thing that we see is that blockchain can significantly deliver productivity gain, and also reducing fraud. Because if you see all the data end to end, you have much better control of your trades and reduce your leakage. Second scenario is that if your trade and your payment information can be integrated in one platform. Right? For example, if all of the purchase order is issued and all of the related ledgers is happening on the same platform to the point of making the payment, right? You have two very strong validations. One, you can validate whether the trade is real or not, right? From being able to verify the purchase order against a good receipt, against the invoice. And at the same time, you also control the payment. Right? By doing that, right, you can end up providing liquidity into the system, provide lending to your supplier at very low risk. Because as long as you can verify that the trades are real and you control the payment, you can easily provide lending into the platform without worrying whether the money that you lend out will be paid or not. Right? The third scenario is that if you look at the trade documents today, right, whether their purchase order, their good receipt, or the invoice, those documents represent a promise to pay at a point in time in the future. Right? Today, we all rely on banks to provide liquidity into the supply chain. But just imagine that with all of the trade flows in your company, if you can tokenize it, which can be done with blockchain technology, you tokenize it, then you can securitize it. Means that you can turn that token around and sell it to investors who's willing to accept the risk. Right? Therefore, blockchain will enable you to enhance liquidity of the company without having to rely on banks. Right? If you have a lot of trades, you can tokenize your trades, you can resell that to investors. Right? And lastly, with blockchain, all of the records are secure and immutable, means that once you commit the trade, there's complete auditability, traceability, such that when you deal with the government, you deal with the tax collectors, right? They have access to the same information. Therefore, you can simplify the way you file tax and the way you do record keeping in your company. We did this as a platform. We launched a platform called Blockchain for Procure to Pay in August of 2018. Right? There was a question that what's the biggest challenge in using blockchain in the real world? Right? If you look at our ramp-up curve on the left-hand side, we launched it in August 2018. Right? At the end of year 2018, we were able to onboard 10 companies. And the reason why it was like that, because we learned after launching it that in the real world, supply chain trade is very complex. Right? Sometimes your supplier deliver a product to you, you might have partial delivery, you might reject some of the products because of quality. There's needs to issue credit note, debit notes, right? Prices could be different. Right, the price at delivery could be different than the price at purchase or in the purchase order. So all of those exceptions made it harder for us to scale. That's why in the first year we only scaled 10 companies. Then, if you look at the end of year 2019, we were up to 1,451 companies. And the reason being that we learned from our earlier version and we start fixing all of the gaps. Right? And if you look, the data that I showed today is end of May. We have already had more than 5,000 companies using this. If you look at end of July, we already surpassed 6,000 companies. So we're on track that by the end of this year, there'll be over 10,000 companies using this platform. And the pipeline that we have, we believe that by the end of 2021, we will have about 40,000 companies using this platform. So we have overcome the early entry barrier. And I think right now we're quite confident that at least for Thailand, we are scaling it rapidly. And the reason we able to do that because of the productivity gain that's enabled by this platform. We look at our existing customers, wide range of customers. What we have learned from about 2 years of using this is that we are able to deliver productivity increase at the rate of about 1.3 US dollar per invoice, up to 2.5 US dollar per invoice that is being processed. And the savings mainly come from the productivity gain and the elimination of labor involvement in the process. If you take procure-to-pay process, normally it consists of about 19 steps. Our platform automates 14 out of the 19 steps. That's why we deliver big saving. Right? And this saving is based on labor rate in Thailand. If you apply this in Japan or if you apply this in country with higher labor cost, we believe that the productivity gain will be even higher than this. Another thing that is very interesting of distributed ledger is the ability to bring all of the data together, especially at the very detailed level, enable us to detect and eliminate fraud. Today, most companies, when we process invoices, because one invoice you can have like 100 line items, right? It's very difficult to do the matching at the line item level. Therefore, most companies do the matching at the header level. So if you have the amount in the good receipt equal to amount in the invoice, equal to amount in the PO, then you pay. But in reality, your line level detail could be different. Therefore, it opens up for possibility of frauds, right? But with distributed ledger and with the ability to integrate data from purchase order, from good receipt, and from invoices, we can check everything down to the line item level. So if there's any discrepancy, we'll detect that. And with the ability to integrate trade data and payment processes onto one platform, we're able to provide lower cost financing to the suppliers. Just give you an example. In Thailand, if a supplier wants invoice financing, typically a supplier need to take the approved invoice to a bank. Right? A bank spend about 3 to 5 days to approve the invoice. And because the bank doesn't know whether the same supplier take the same invoice to multiple banks or not, the bank need to compensate for the risk by providing the supplier with higher interest rate. Right? But because our platform, we know we can validate that the trades are real, we can approve financing on the same day. Right? We know that the payment once happened, it happened on our platform. We take collection at payment. Therefore, we're able to provide lending at more than 10% lower rate than the ongoing market rate. Right? And because we control the payment, we be able to execute payment on time. Currently, even if your company give a supplier 30 days payment term, right? In reality, it's not 30 days because in reality, the payment is executed in batches, right? So it's 30 days plus the next payment date, payment batch running date. So in reality, you're talking 45 to 60 days anyway. Once you have this kind of platform, what we have seen buyers being able to do is to go back to the suppliers to change the term from 30 days to do 45 or 60 days. But the difference this time is that when they said 45 or 60, the payment happened exactly on the date. right? And the last point may be unique for Thailand because everything is on the platform. The government came in and is auditing the platform. If everything goes well by the end of October this year, the government will change the law that the company that use the platform will not have to submit paper records, nor have they had to maintain the record for 10 years, just in case for if the government want to audit the trade. So this is what we have done so far. So we at the phase now, we're looking to scale overseas. So if any of the participants here are interested in exploring this, we'll be more than happy to engage with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Aurabon. Much appreciated your thorough presentation. In due of time, I'm going to hold my burning question and probably better to pass on the floor to Jesse. Jesse.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you to SMBC and Nikkei for putting this event on. My name is Jesse Chenard. I'm the CEO of a company called Monetigo. Monetigo is a blockchain company or a fintech company focused on the financial services space. I started in the technology about 20 years ago. I've seen a lot of different transformations. I've been a part of a lot of them from the consumer side of things, from the media side of things. I got into fintech about 5 years ago. And one of the things that I quickly learned is that the business-to-business side of fintech didn't really get the digital wave that a lot of other areas have had. As pointed out on the panel before, a lot of these systems that are out there today, if they are systems, if they're not just Excel spreadsheets, are very disparate. There's not a lot of interoperability. There's a lot of complexity to them. A lot of paper still is exchanged in a lot of cases. And so what we set out to do about 5 years ago was really look at how DLT specifically could alleviate some of these problems. So one of the first areas where we've had success and had a production network running in India is very similar to what Mr. Orapong was just speaking about, is reducing fraud in receivables financing. As he mentioned, a bill may be presented to multiple financiers in an environment, and they have no way of knowing if it's been going to be fraudulently or double financed. And so what we do is we provide a network for people to discreetly communicate with each other as to whether they've financed an invoice previously or not. So we started that in India in 2008, March of 2018, and that has been running there. Initially, it was focused for 3 receivables marketplaces, similar to a lot of the fintechs out there that are looking at small businesses and aggregating them to provide them short-term financing. These 3 exchanges needed the ability to communicate financing amongst them. Blockchain was a great use case for it. The factoring industry in India caught wind of that. The finance industry in India caught wind of it. They all wanted to join the platform. That transferred into some interest in Latin America, now also here in Asia. And so in terms of what we think of, going back to your question, Mr. Yamazaki-san, how is this transforming society and what changes are it bringing? A lot of what we will see with DLT and blockchain is not seeing it. A lot of what we experience from a consumer, and it's at a sort of a people or a personal level. We don't know if it's an Oracle database or a Microsoft database in the back end. It becomes somewhat blind to us or invisible to us. So I think what's happening, where you see with Monetigo reducing fraud in receivables financing, and those companies are focused on the small to medium-sized enterprises. So these small businesses that really do have working capital needs, it reduces the fraud. And as Mr. Orapong said, right now there's a risk premium priced into the financing that they offer, so they're able to offer more competitive rates. It is literally the engine of the economy, according to the World Bank, and so that's a very positive effect. And then, I think in terms of on the more upper side of things, there's a democratization of finance that's happening. Mr. Orapong also mentioned tokenization. Once these assets are digitally created and tokenized, the ability to securitize them, to sell them out to institutional investors, retail investors, even you can break it up. There's a massive opportunity there. So we look at the space as very ripe with opportunity. We look for discrete applications. So again, it's really looking at right now the complex world of trade finance, but with the very simple application of how do we reduce fraud, double spending. And so we've got some good work on that. We've got some good partners. We are, like I say, rolling it out here in Asia. Thailand is one of the areas we've got good opportunity. Singapore. Everywhere we go, when we say, would you like to reduce fraud in receivables financing, we generally get a very favorable response. I know we're pressed for time here, so I'll leave it at that in terms of what we do, but in terms of our products, what have you. So what are the obstacles? Having had a deployed network up and running since March of 2018 in India, we've seen a lot of obstacles. I think that the biggest obstacle, as Leon described before, was inertia. People don't want to change if the system is working. Why fix it? There's also the scale of what we're working on in a highly regulated environment. It may be slightly more expensive and more cumbersome to release commercial paper the way it's done in certain instances, or bank guarantees or bonds. But because of the high sort of value of the transaction, it's okay. If it's not broke, don't fix it. And your compliance people will always say no and tell you not to do something different. So, I think that's a big piece there. What is the competition that we have? Excel spreadsheets in a lot of cases. I was floored to learn that several major banks that we had discussed how they manage their commercial paper issuances and track them as an IPA and what have you. Some of them use Excel spreadsheets for this. So there's internal homegrown processes that even back in 2000, when we were looking at digitizing certain things, we would have just built a simple access database for. So I think that's the biggest piece. And then, as touched on by the previous panelist, it's how do you get that network effect? Our sort of strategy around that has been providing a very simple solution that doesn't require you to replace the whole ecosystem. It can be bolted onto what you're doing today. It can be bolted onto what folks like Orapong and Leon are doing with TradeIX and Digital Ventures or Gear to Pay. So that's, I think where the real challenges lie, and obviously the regulatory piece, that's always a big piece. Going in there and speaking with the regulators, doing the education. R3 and the other people in the space have done a great job of that, including central banks and anyone who wants to be a part of it to come in and learn. As these guys have said before, this is going to be very impactful, and it's going to be quite an exciting time to be in banking again. So that's my piece there, and I'll turn it over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jesse, and also being conscious of the time. I'm pretty sure the double financing is an issue and the problem and the challenge for every other bank, no matter which country you belong to. And I'm pretty sure you'll be welcome to Japan. And obviously, as one of the Japanese banks, we're looking forward to kind of work together with you too.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah. Now the time to switch to Japanese back again. 赤羽様、NTD データの赤羽様、ぜひ次最後のプレゼンよろしくお願いいたします。
すみません、何分やってよろしいんでしょうか。もう終わりだと思うんですけれども。
申し訳ないですけど、あと5分で、おまとめいただけますでしょうか。
はい、わかりました。はい、では日本の取り組みとして我々の進めているトレードワルツというブロックチェーンを使った貿易プラットフォームについてお話しさせていただきます。でこちらはですね、2017年8月にですね、日本の主だった貿易関係の大企業の皆様、オールジャパンの体制でコンソーシアムを始めたものになります。3メガバンクさん、3メガ損保様、そして商社様ですね、そして船会社様、こういったものが参加して課題のすり合わせおよびこのサービスが始まった暁にはこの省流を載せるということで皆様検討してきていただいたものになります。やはりブロックチェーンを使った新しいシステムを作るときの一つのバリアとして企業の壁というのがあるわけですが、それを解消するためにまずここから取り組んだというものになります。でさらに我々の特徴としましては、今のように特定の業界によらずクロスインダストリーであるというプラットフォームになっております。でさらに非常に幅広な貿易書類をすべてデジタル化する。 でここで一点大事なのは、PDF のようなものでは全くデータの再利用性がないので、すべて構造化データでやっています。でこうすることで、その溜まってきたデータをもとに、新しいビジネスをするサードパーティーの方が入ってくるようなエコシステムというものを作ろうと思っています。で我々が目指しているのは、このような、データを集積することだけではなくて、ブロックチェーンによって何を変えるかといったところなんですが、我々が実現したいのは、紙というものが、今まで物理的な存在が果たしていた原本性という概念、これをデジタルのデータに付与することで、各企業であるとか、あるいはその紙の書類が今まで果たしていた役割を、ブロックチェーンプラットフォーム上のデータこそが原本であると。これをブロックチェーンによってみんなが同時に共有しているのだという世界を作ると、そういうものになります。で、先ほど申しましたように、世の中さまざまなプラットフォームがございまして、トレードレンズ様ですとか、ポーロ様ですとか、特定の船会社ですとか、銀行業界を中心に取り組んでいる取り組みに対して、我々は、垂直統合ですね、すべての業界の皆様にまず使っていただく。でこれを日本からさらにアジア、そして世界へとつなげていこうというふうに考えてございます。で先ほどからその生産性の話というのは議論があるので、皆様改めてということでもないんですが、我々もコンソーシアムの中で実証実験を行って、このように高い生産性を得られることができる。コストなんかを 60% 減らすことができる。こういった結果が得られています。さらにやっぱりこういった貿易プラットフォームを作るときに、どうしてもその SME、中小、小さい企業の方々をどう巻き込むかという話がございまして、こういった方々にも必要なウェブのインターフェースを設けることで、しっかりとカバレッジを広げていくということを取り組んでいるございます。で先ほど不正の防止という形もありましたけれども、こちらについても昨年、タイのですね JCCIB の方々と実験をさせていただきました。これはタイの中の銀行協会、工業連盟、商工会議所、こういった方々の連合組織なんですが、彼らと実際に一緒にやることで、例えば先ほどありましたダブルファイナンスといったものがきちんとチェックして、防ぐことができるというものも結果として得られているというものになります。で我々はですね、ここで大事だと思っているのは、日本の NTT データのサービスを各国みんなが使ってくださいという話ではなくてですね、ここに書いてございますインフラストラクチャーフォーシェアリングデータウィズブロックチェーン、原本性が担保されたブロックチェーンのプラットフォームというものを各国で持っていただき、その上でそれぞれの国でビジネスを展開していただくフランチャイズ型のエコシステムというのを作っていこうと考えています。その中で日本の機能がASEAN で使えるものであれば、それを使っていただくというのもあるでしょうし、ASEAN の方で作ったものがそれぞれ他の国で有用なのであれば、それぞれの国でまたそれを売り買いするということができるようになる、そういった意味でのエコシステムというものを作ろうと考えているものになります。でやはりなぜこういうふうにしたかというと、先ほど言ったそのブロックチェーンが乗り越える壁というもののもう一つが、やっぱり貿易なので国と国をまたがったところで、そこをまたがるところにブロックチェーンというのを導入しています。でそうすることで、すべての企業がですね、ブロックチェーンのノードを持つというのは、これはリスクもコストもかかることで、なかなかできるわけではない。結局大企業の方がそのノードを持つ形態になって、そこにデータの集中が起きてですね、ある意味GAFA、Google、Amazon みたいな形で、情報がですね、一部の特定の企業に握られてしまう。こういった状況をやっぱり防ぐということも考えなければならないということで、データのガバナンスということも含めた、そういったプラットフォームの構造を取っています。ただ、当然のことながら、我々のプラットフォームがですね、世界をまたがってですね、すべてのところに適用できるわけでもないと思っておりますので、様々なマルコ・ポーロさんですとか、本日紹介になった様々なプラットフォームとの間で連携していくというのが非常に大事だと思っておりまして、そうすることでですね、お客様が安心して、デジタル化に取り組む。特定のプラットフォームに入っちゃうと、他のプラットフォーム使えないというのでは、なかなか心配で進めないと思いますので、こういった不安を払拭する形でやっていく。その際に当然大事になってくるのがインターオペラビリティという概念になって、これが3つ目のですね、我々が乗り越えなければならない壁の最後のところですけれども、やっぱりインターオペラビリティを議論する場っていうのが必要だと思っています。これについては世界の中でもインターナショナルチェンバーオブコマース、国際商業会議所が長年貿易の標準化をやってきたというところではあるんですが、彼らがですね、やっぱりこういったインターオペラビリティを議論する場というものを設けようと動いています。で我々は彼らときっちりとですね、連携していきたいと考えておりまして、 昨年じゃないですね、今年の1月末のダボス会議の閉催イベントで、ICC とシンガポールのイムダですね、これデジタル化を推進している省庁なんですが、彼らと共同でサイニングセレモニーというのを行いまして、その中には我々だけではなくて、コンソーシアム参加企業の方々、日本からは10社が参加してですね、参与するということで、ブロックチェーンによる貿易のデジタル化だけではなくて、インターペラビリティの確保が一番大事なんだということを国際的にアピールしたというものになります。こういうことをですね、もっと皆様と、本日はちょっと情報がですね、短かったですけれども、しっかりと広げていく。今年サービスをスタートして、日本のデータシステムでダックスをつなげて、さらに海外にも展開していって、数年後には 100% のペーパーレスを目指していくということを考えてございますので、ぜひここはですね、皆様と力を合わせて、デジタル化というものを促進していきたいと思いますので、よろしくお願いいたします。以上となります。ありがとうございました。
茜様、ありがとうございました。4名のパネリストの方、それぞれの推進されるプラットフォーム、オープンアカウントをやられているマルコ・ポーロ、ないしはデジタルベンチャーズ。デジタルベンチャーズについてはもう1万社のオンボードを望む状況。二重金融を防ぐマネタゴ。さらには、業界の壁を越えて原本性を担保されるトレードワールド様の特徴。このあたりの今、推進されているプラットフォームのポイントをご理解いただいて、で皆様のご事業のプラスになれば、幸いでございます。これをもってこのセッションを終わりとさせていただきたくも思います。ご清聴いただきましてありがとうございました。
ご登壇いただきました皆様、どうもありがとうございました。